What is religion? The Oxford Dictionary defines religion as the belief in and worship of a superhuman controlling power. It comes from the human curiosity of how the natural world came to be, beginning with mythologies and moving forward with modern religions. The major difference between the two is the scientific evidence that disproves and loosely supports the testaments of spiritual doctrines. However, Emil Durkheim argues that religion is an expression of our collective consciousness. He proposed that religion has three major functions: to provide cohesion to help maintain social solidarity through shared rituals and beliefs, as a social contract to enforce religious-based morals and to help maintain conformity and control, and finally, it offers meaning and purpose to answer any existential questions. The first function of religion, according to Durkheim, to provide cohesion to help maintain social solidarity through shared rituals and beliefs, can be accepted as an accurate representation of religion in society. As seen throughout history, blind faith in a higher power tends to unite uncommon people under a common belief. For example, knights in the time of Crusades believed that their quest to retake the Holy Land was the will of God. Thousands of people came together under a common purpose because of their shared beliefs. It was a false narrative the Pope used to build an army against his enemies. After 2 decades of crusades, the only thing that came out of it was an increased tolerance of violence within the clergy. This false narrative is one of the many examples of Durkheim's second function of religion, which is that it serves as a social contract to enforce religious-based morals and to help maintain conformity and control. This is simply an abuse of power, one that faithful followers allow established religions to have over them. The Roman Catholic Church is guilty of the manipulation of our social contract. Early conflict caused by manipulation of the social contract is seen in the East-West Schism, a time when there was a separation of ideas and political views within the church, which created factions that still exist today. It was a break in communication that was mended only slightly by the First Crusade, and yet the thirst for control remained, and most factions today still recognize the Pope as the central religious leader of Christianity. The issue with the hierarchical system decreed is presented when the leader becomes corrupt and uses their power to the sole benefit of their own desires. The idea of maintaining conformity and control is based on the whims of whoever is in charge. One pope could have said the floor is lava, and the next could have said it was the sea. The people simply had to believe and follow their commands as if it was the word of God. Durkheim's third function of religion is to offer meaning and purpose to answer any existential questions. This would arguably be the most fundamental function of religion in our modern society. Science has answered many questions about the natural world, yet not all of them. Sometimes a life-changing event will happen and we will wonder why, or how, or even what we did to deserve it. It isn't a question that can be answered by scientific theories and laws, so naturally we turn to faith and higher powers out of our control for the reason. The answer each person seeks varies depending on the religion the individual believes in. However, the social crime we are all guilty of these days is the persecution of a people for their faith. Historically, the United States has been a melting pot of culturally and religiously different people. When the colonies declared independence and began to formulate our democratic government, Founding Father Thomas Jefferson implored for the separation of church and state. Jefferson saw the power of manipulation that religion possessed and actively worked to rid the government of such manipulations. One law in particular, the Establishment Clause of the First Amendment, was meant to protect citizens from religious persecution. After all, the freedom to religion lies at the heart of the freedom that America stands for. Today, groups of conservative Christians are pushing to reform the social studies curriculum in Texas regarding the Establishment Clause. They argue that the phrase separation of church and state does not appear in the Constitution. Therefore, it is a creation of the courts to disregard the intent of the Founding Fathers to create a Christian nation. And yet, there has always been conservative Christian groups influencing American politics and society. One such instance that comes to mind is the Scopes trial, which was a legal case in 1925 that brought the modernist perspective to the spotlight. An idea that an adaptation of religion was necessary in response to new scientific discoveries like evolution. The case was won on a technicality, but anti-evolution laws were still deemed constitutional until their eventual repeal in 1967. From there, religion became a taboo subject, no longer allowed to be taught in public schools. Where does that lead us today? To conservative Christian groups pushing that evolution be taught alongside creationism in science class. Despite the fundamental function of religion of offering meaning and purpose and answers to existential questions, this particular reform is not ideal for a public school classroom. As it is, evolution is a hard concept to grasp because of the length of time necessary to physically see the change outlined. It isn't as simple as teaching students about the monkeys, teaching them about God, then allowing them to make their own conclusions. For this reform to be inclusive, it must teach the doctrines of creation outlined by several common religions. When pairing the scientifically supported curriculum of evolution with multiple religious perspectives, most, if not all, based on metaphor and concept, students would become confused and discouraged with finding the right answer. Despite the modernist functions Durkheim proposed, we live in a fundamentally different time. Religion is no longer held at the high esteem it once stood at. The manipulation of our social contract is no longer being tolerated. More and more we find there is a violation of human rights by religions all across the globe, and the fight to dissolve those violations is passionately fueled. Religion should not be about creating cohesion through shared rituals, nor enforcing religious-based morals and maintaining conformity. It should be about having faith and hope for better things to come.